Well, I think junk food is very seductive, right? So actually, when you're hungry, there's nothing more delicious than the smell of McDonald's or the tantalizing prospect of a little cone of McNuggets. But in the end, it's not a very healthy diet, and it's okay to do every now and then. But if you try and sustain yourself on a permanent diet of that, actually you make yourself ill. And it just struck me that there were a lot of similarities between food and love, because we can't live without them. We need good quality food and love to really have a good life. And it's really important to your health, not only your mental health, but your physical health. And eating well and finding someone to love you well and love them back well can be challenging. I don't think there's a number one mistake that people make, but I do think that people often fall back on exes as a sort of comfort, thinking that it will get them through a moment of loneliness or solitude. And I think of it like the donut at 4 o'clock, that you have an energy crash, you need a quick fixer-upper, and you reach for something, and then half an hour later you're like, oh, why did I do that? You're still hungry, and now you're full of remorse. I think you resist being triggered by understanding what triggers you. So knowing that if you go out on a Saturday night with a group of friends and you all drink and you come home and you're on your own, that might be a danger zone. So to pay attention to that time. And one of the things I really urge people to do is to keep a diary so that you can monitor your own behaviour and understand when you have your own weak points. If you know that 4 o'clock is your energy low, then at the beginning of the day you want to eat with that in mind. So you want to eat something at 2 o'clock, and maybe you have a bit more lunch than you think you need, so you're not hungry at 4. Or you build in a meeting at 3:30 that goes through to 5 o'clock, so you don't have the moment where you can break off. And it's amazing how actually when you're really busy, you don't necessarily think about food or love, and it's the sort of obsessive thoughts about it all that I think bring you down and also heighten your triggers. So I think understanding your behaviour and then setting up a system so that you're not left on a Saturday night lonely and drunk and we're reaching to make the text. I think that people are feeling more lonely for a variety of reasons. One is that our devices were supposed to connect us, and often they do, and they're absolutely brilliant. We're never going to live without them, but it's not a zero-sum game. Because it's so much easier now to hedge your bets and delay making commitments to what you're going to do that evening, you can often be left high and dry. It's often easier to plan in advance so that you know you've got something set up. And I think it's very easy when you're facing a moment of solitude or an evening in that was unplanned to go down the rabbit hole of social media and see that everybody else is apparently having a much better time than you are. And it's really important not to do that, to just be disciplined, put it down, say, actually, this is not going to make me feel better to follow everybody else on Saturday night. I may not have anything to do with other people, but I'm going to read a book, I'm going to cook a meal, I'm going to start tapestrying, whatever you want to do. I'm going to go to the gym, I'm going to sign up to join a choir, I'm going to write a letter, old-fashioned letter to somebody. But I think it's important to spend time off your device. Just as it's possible to have junk love, it's also possible to have junk friendships, or friends that bring you down, that you're not quite able to cut the cord on. And again, I think keeping a journal is really good. Track your energy, be your own data analytics expert. Figure out who are the people that give me great energy, who are the people that I feel down about or conflicted after I've seen them. And once you see that pattern, start reducing the amount of time that you spend with the people that may be toxic and are actually bringing you down. And in the moment, you might not necessarily realise it, but you might wake up the next morning and think, I'm not feeling so good about myself, or, why did she say that? And I think that women have these great squads of friends. We love our squads of friends, and we can't live without them. But they can also be super judgy. So I think at the beginning of a relationship that you really care about, you don't always want to expose it to the judgment of your friends. You might want to keep it private or bring one person into the loop, but don't overshare, because once you've overshared, it's really hard to get it back. My best advice for detoxing from a friend, and you might not necessarily want them to know that you're trying to spend less time with them, is to introduce new things into your life which don't necessarily include them. So maybe you take up sailing, maybe you decide you want to play tennis, or you want to join the church choir, and make it clear that this is something you're doing with other people that are perhaps already in the church choir, or that are in a sports team that you've decided to join, so that it's clear you're embarking on some things on your own. So it's not that you're leaving them out, it's that you're trying something new. You don't always want to call attention to the fact that you're trying to cut people out of your life, because you don't want to hurt their feelings. But if this is someone that's ultimately not bringing good energy to you, then you do want to get rid of them. And I think of it a bit like the way that you test for food allergies. You know, who are the people that you have an adverse reaction to? And then, you know, if it was a food, you wouldn't eat it again, and you'd slowly just eradicate it from your diet. And I think that's the best way to think about it. We are at the beginning of understanding our behaviour with these devices. It's not zero sum, we're never going to put them down. They're amazing devices and all the things that they can do for us, but they often come at the expense of participating in real life. And I do think there's a difference between virtual life and real life. I think there's a difference between a friend who sits with you when you're feeling sick, or who listens to you as you're droning on about your boyfriend problems, and a friend who you've never actually met in real life and simply likes your tweets. I think nothing could be more important than sharing experiences with friends, new friends, old friends, because that's actually what builds friendship. It's funny experiences. It's spending the night, as I did last week, with a group of friends on Governor's Island glamping. It was hilarious. It's breaking down, as I've also done, in a car in a field in Mexico with friends. We always talk about it. When I see the friend we broke down with, the first thing we do is discuss it. And so you want connective tissue like that happens in real life. And nothing has to be perfect. In fact, if a trip goes wrong, it's even funnier. Like the trip I once went on to, I once went to with friends, and we thought that we had a house on the beach. We did have a house on the beach. We weren't allowed to swim in the sea because it was a protected biosphere, not something anybody had told us in advance. So it's the funny things that actually build friendships over years, and that's the stuff of value. And you know, that's when you can call someone and say, listen, I'm going to have chemo, do you mind coming with me? I mean, friendships should be built over the years with an amount of trust, of people knowing that they can trust you to show up when you don't feel like it, and you can trust them to show up for you when they've got other more important things to do. That's what friendship is. It's not liking somebody's tweet or following them.
Right, it's actually having those moments, like you said, that you can't get on your phone at all.
Well, friendship is about being able to trust someone, it's about being able to rely on someone, and it's about knowing that you will step up for them when they'll step up for you. And it's also about who do you want to hang out with when you have milestones. You know, who are the people you want to invite to your engagement, or who are the people that you call, who are the first 5 people you call when you've got a new job, when you've lost a job, when you've lost a parent, when you're super excited about something. Who are the people in that world that you can rely on? Dating apps are incredibly useful for expanding not only your love life, but actually, and probably more realistically, your entire social network. And if you think about how people react after college, they stay with the people they went to college with. If they know them, they're all in the same town together. But it can be very lonely moving to a new town. You're working at a company, maybe you don't see that many opportunities for socializing with the people at work. It's much better to have a life outside of work anyway. And I think dating apps, Tinder, Bumble, Hinge, Happen, they can all have this extra circle of connection, which can become really exciting. And also, you might not like the person you meet on the date, but you might have someone you want to introduce them to. They might have someone they want to introduce you to. So it's really just a small pebble dropped in a pond that can have great ripple effects. I remember once reading a profile of a woman in a magazine and thinking, this woman is so cool, I can't believe I haven't met her, because she sort of worked in my world. And I just called her out of the blue. I found a friend we had in common, and I called her and said, hey, can you just set up an introduction? And now she's one of my most trusted friends. She's fantastic. If there were one rule to take away, I think it would be keeping a journal on yourself and your behaviour and looking for patterns in your own behaviour, because it explains so much. And also it means that you can avoid putting yourself in situations when you might actually be ending up putting yourself in danger, emotional danger or physical danger. And I think we spend a lot of time thinking about how other people behave. We don't always spend a huge amount of time reflecting on our own behaviour, for good and for ill. And I do think that keeping a diary or keeping a journal allows you to monitor your own behaviour, and over time you build up a real sense of what's good for you, what's not good for you, when you feel happy, what makes you feel depressed. And that's really, really useful knowledge. And you don't have to pay for a therapist. It's not going to take you an hour a week in some godforsaken corner of the city you can't get to, and you're not going to have to fiddle around with your health insurance forms. It's free therapy, and you're doing it on yourself. I think if you can get into a reasonable habit with a journal of keeping it maybe 2 or 3 times a week, or maybe even just once a week, but you build it up over 3 months, 6 months, a year, once you start building momentum with it and a real sense of building information, it grows on itself and it's hard to put down. And then you can really start looking back, and even 3 months ago you can think, oh my goodness, I didn't realise I felt like that, or oh interesting, I thought that was a good party, but now I look at it, I realise I was actually kind of miserable.
Definitely.
It hides, a journal reveals things to you about yourself that you didn't know. I've kept a journal since I was 7.
And how often do you write in them?
I can go for 6 months without writing it, but I'm pretty good at keeping it fairly religiously. And the other thing you can do if you want is take pictures with your cell phone. So you can take pictures of yourself, of your mood. You can take pictures of other things to remind you of things, but there's nothing like actually writing something down and having to articulate to yourself how you're feeling. In my job as editor of Cosmopolitan and Marie Claire, I came across hundreds of young women who were feeling really conflicted about dating and love, and they felt that they had to put their jobs first, that women feel now that they don't want to be reliant on men, that it seems weak if they're reliant on men. I wasn't hearing anybody talking about falling in love, which is, after all, one of the great motivators of life, but I was hearing a lot about people hooking up and feeling a little depressed about it, if it was going on, if they were hooking up sort of relentlessly. And I was hearing people saying that they felt it was retro to admit that they wanted to find someone and have children, and that's a difficult thing to wrestle with. So I wanted to unpack all that. And also, dating apps are wonderful, wonderful things, but they don't come with operating instructions. And I talked to a lot of people who really found them difficult to use, and that you would put yourself out there online and get a lot of unwanted incoming, and you know what I'm talking about. And so I wanted to sort of try and come up with a really practical set of guidelines to make it easier. Maximising your profile is really important, and so many people are very general and they go, I have a great sense of humour, I love to hike, I love music. That's not enough. You want to be really precise, do a deep dive. So say I love Coldplay, or I love Nickelback, hopefully not Nickelback, or I love hiking in the Adirondacks, or I love hiking but only in the Santa Monica Mountains, I won't hike anywhere else. Show your personality. What is don't just say love restaurants, say I like eating Italian food but from North Italy, and I really like puntarelli when it's in season. Be really detailed about it so that you're giving a sense of who you are, but also a sense of your real authentic passion. Don't say you like sailing if you've never been in a boat. Don't say, I remember someone telling me she'd put that she liked hiking in her profile, and then the guy said, well, let's go hiking. She was like, oh my God, he asked me to go hiking, what a nightmare. And I was like, well, why did you say you like hiking? So you want to be authentic, because that way you'll tap into people who share your interest, which immediately means you've got something to talk about. And also, it's more fun being honest. It's more fun. Otherwise, you have to sort of, try and remember the sort of nonsense you've claimed that, you once went to a, Bob Dylan concert or a Taylor Swift concert when you really didn't. I have been asked repeatedly about office relationships and how should people behave in offices now. And I think post Me Too and post Time's Up, there's a lot of anxiety about office behaviour, and clearly not just in terms of how people relate on a relationship basis and whether or not they can start dating, but just in terms of office manners and how people should behave towards each other. So I'm pretty sure I'm going to be tackling behaviour in the office next.